You probably know Canada for its vast wilderness, its modern cities, and its natural beauty. But buried beneath the boreal forests, hidden in the shield rock of the Canadian Shield, and scattered across remote tundra, are structures that have puzzled archaeologists, Indigenous elders, and explorers for centuries. Stone circles with no recorded purpose, mounds aligned to the stars, rock formations carved with symbols no one can decipher, Inukshuk towers standing in the Arctic where the wind never stops. In this video, we're counting down 15 ancient structures across Canada that defy easy explanation. Places where the line between natural stone and deliberate construction blurs, where the why and who remain mysteries, whispered only by the land itself. From the prairies of Alberta to the hidden valleys of British Columbia, from the rocky shores of Nova Scotia to the frozen reaches of the Arctic, we're exploring the unexplained. So stick with me to the end, because number one will take you to a place so strange, so perfectly aligned, that even the experts admit they simply don't know what it is or who built it. So hit subscribe and let's begin. Number 15, the quarrying pits of the Serpent River, Northern Ontario. If you canoe up certain stretches of the Serpent River in Northern Ontario, moving slowly through blackwater channels ringed by spruce and birch, you'll begin to notice something odd about the riverbanks. The rock face isn't smooth. It's pockmarked with deep, deliberate-looking pits and gouges, arranged in patterns that seem too regular to be natural weathering. Local Anishinaabe guides have known about these marks for generations, and they suggest something remarkable. These are ancient quarries, places where people thousands of years ago extracted stone by heating and fracturing the granite. But here's the puzzle. The tools needed to create such deep, precise pits haven't been found. No evidence of fire blackening, no debris field, just the marks themselves, weathered smooth by time and water, suggesting an age almost impossible to calculate. Today, the pits remain, silent testimony to a technique that left almost no other trace. Number 14, the medicine wheels of the prairies. Across the high prairies of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Wyoming sits a network of stone circles, some as wide as a football field, built entirely from stacked rubble and boulders. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming is perhaps the most famous, but Canada has dozens more, scattered across grassland and ridgetop from Moose Jaw to the Sweetgrass Hills. What makes them mysteriously is their precision. Many align perfectly with the summer and winter solstices. Others point toward the rising and setting positions of specific stars. Some are arranged in patterns that suggest they were astronomical calendars, used to track seasons and celestial events thousands of years ago. Yet the tribes who live on these prairies today have only fragmentary knowledge of who built them or when. Elders speak of them in reverential whispers, places of power, places that predate the cultures that now live there. Stand in the center of one on a clear night, and you can feel why. The sky is impossibly large, and the stones seem to be talking to it in a language we've forgotten. Number 13, the petroglyphs of the Thelon River, Northwest Territories. Deep in the barren lands of the Northwest Territories, accessible only by canoe or float plane, the Thelon River cuts through tundra and ancient rock. In certain protected alcoves along the river, carved into smooth granite faces are symbols, human figures, animal tracks, geometric patterns, and shapes that don't correspond to anything researchers can identify. The carvings are old, their edges weathered and softened, suggesting centuries or more of exposure. The mystery isn't just what they mean, but who carved them and when. The region has been inhabited by Dene, Inuit, and earlier peoples for thousands of years, but the art style of these petroglyphs seems to belong to no single culture. Some scholars suggest they might be 3,000, 5,000, even 10,000 years old. The river still flows past them, indifferent, and the symbols remain, guardians of a story no living voice can tell. Number 12, the stone arrangements of Cayage, Ontario. Near the northern shore of Lake Simcoe in Ontario sits the former site of Cayage, a major Huron-Wendat settlement that existed before European contact. But before the villages stood there, before the longhouses, someone arranged stones in perfect linear patterns across the landscape, long lines of glacial boulders, some running for hundreds of meters, oriented north-south with uncanny precision. Archaeologists have found similar arrangements at other pre-contact sites, but their purpose remains obscure. Were they territorial markers, spiritual boundaries, astronomical alignments? The builders left no written record, and the knowledge carried by oral tradition was disrupted by disease and displacement. Today, these stone lines are barely visible beneath the forest undergrowth, found only by those who know to look. If you walk the forest floor there, you can still find them. The lines speaking silently of an intention long forgotten, a landscape once organized by a logic we can no longer read. Number 11. The cup and ring carvings of Nova Scotia. Along the rocky shorelines and inland outcrops of Nova Scotia, particularly in the south-central regions, are carved thousands of small circular depressions, some simple cups, others ringed with concentric circles, some connected by straight lines or channels carved into the stone. They appear on protected cliff faces, in hidden rock shelters, and scattered across tidal zone boulders. European scholars initially dismissed them as natural weathering or recent vandalism, but they appear too frequently, in patterns too deliberate, across too wide a geographic area, to be anything but intentional. Archaeological evidence suggests they could be 2,000, 3,000, or even older years old. The Mi'kmaq people spoke of these carvings in their traditions, but the exact meaning was never recorded by outsiders. Some researchers propose they were territorial markers. Others suggest calendric or astronomical purposes. Others propose they were simply a language, a writing system that used cup and ring as its grammar. Whatever their purpose, they cover hundreds of stones, patient and mysterious, waiting in the salt spray. Number 10. The Atlatl House Depressions, British Columbia interior. High in the interior valleys of British Columbia, archaeologists have mapped thousands of shallow, circular depressions in the earth, each one roughly the size and depth of a large room, arranged in villages across open meadowland. These are attributed to semi-subterranean winter houses used by interior Salishan peoples hundreds of years ago. But here's what puzzles researchers. The villages are laid out with an order and symmetry that seems overly precise for temporary camps. The depressions themselves show little evidence of the organic material. Wood beams, hide coverings, accumulated debris. You'd expect from houses that sheltered people through harsh winters. It's as if people lived there, then left everything behind so completely that only the negative space remains. The archaeological record is tangled by the fact that many of these sites haven't been properly excavated, and much of what we know comes from indigenous oral histories that don't always align with what the ground tells us. Walk across one of these ancient village meadows today, and your eye catches the depressions like a rhythm you can almost read but can't quite translate. Number 9. The Standing Stones of Hebecourt, Quebec. In remote regions of northern Quebec, particularly around the Ungava Peninsula, are scattered fields of standing stones, some as tall as a person, others shorter but deliberately positioned upright in the bedrock. Their age is unknown, their purpose is unknown. Archaeological surveys have been limited because of the remoteness, the harsh climate, and the fact that they fall within indigenous territories where academic research is restricted without proper collaboration and consent. The few researchers who have studied them have proposed theories ranging from territorial markers to astronomical observation points to spiritual or burial monuments. But none of these theories are conclusively supported. Local Inuit and Innu peoples have their own traditions about these stones, stories passed down for generations, but much of that knowledge was interrupted by colonization and residential schools. Today, if you fly over certain regions of far northern Quebec, you can still see these stones from the air. Clusters of uprights against the tundra, placed with apparent intention, their meaning still held close by the land. Number 8. The Serpent Mound of Iowa and its northern cousins. Everyone knows about the Great Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio, a massive effigy mound in the shape of a snake, nearly a quarter-mile long, built thousands of years ago by people whose names are lost. But fewer people know that Canada has dozens of similar mounds, particularly in the Great Lakes region and southern Ontario. These earthworks, built up from soil in deliberate shapes, some circular, some in animal forms like bears and birds, suggest a sophisticated astronomical and spiritual practice. Some align with solstices. Others seem to track lunar cycles. The Mississippian and Adena cultures built them, but the knowledge of how and why they were constructed, what ceremonies they hosted, and what stories they encoded was largely lost before written records. Many were destroyed by European settlement. Others have been absorbed into parks or private land. But in a few protected places, if you stand at the right angle, you can still trace the shape, can still see that thousands of years ago, people moved Earth deliberately to speak to the sky. Number 7. The Thorn Island Underground Structures, Ontario. Off the coast of Ontario in the Great Lakes lies Thorn Island. For centuries, Indigenous peoples fished and camped there. But beneath the island, there are stories of carved stone chambers, underground passages, and geometric arrangements that don't match anything documented about the known tribes of the region. A few archaeological surveys have been conducted, but no consensus has emerged about whether these structures are natural caves modified for human use, or deliberately constructed chambers built for purposes that can only be guessed at. Some theorists have proposed they were sweat lodges or ceremonial spaces. Others suggest astronomical observation chambers. But the evidence is fragmentary, and the island remains largely unstudied, protected as it is by water and by the wishes of local nations who prefer to let the island keep its secrets rather than have it picked over by outsiders with digging tools and documentation forms. Number 6. The Alberta stone cairns and their astronomical precision. Scattered across the foothills and high plains of Alberta are hundreds of cairns, stacked stones that seem to serve no obvious purpose beyond their existence. But when researchers began to map them carefully, measuring their positions relative to one another and checking their alignments against celestial events, a pattern emerged. Many of these cairns line up with each other across miles of landscape, creating sightlines that correspond exactly to the solstices, the equinoxes, and the rising and setting positions of specific bright stars. Some cairn-to-cairn alignments are so precise that they suggest their builders understood basic geometry and spent considerable time and effort surveying the landscape and establishing these markers. Who did this? When? For what purpose? The Blackfoot peoples who have lived on these plains for centuries have their own knowledge of these stones, but that knowledge was suppressed during the reservation era. Today, many cairns have been dismantled or moved by ranchers and developers. But in protected areas, if you know where to look, you can still stand between two stones and see exactly where the sun rose on the summer solstice, thousands of years before any astronomical instrument existed to measure such things. Number 5. The petroglyphs of writing on stone, Alberta. In a hidden coulee in southeastern Alberta, beneath sandstone cliffs, are thousands of petroglyphs carved into the rock face over a span of thousands of years. Human figures with elaborate headdresses, animals, buffalo, elk, deer, geometric patterns, handprints, shields. But some of the carvings depict horses and riders, which creates a profound historical puzzle. Indigenous peoples didn't have horses until the Spanish brought them to North America in the 16th century. Yet some of the petroglyphs at writing on stone appear to be hundreds of years older than that. This has led to wild theories and careful scholarship alike. Did Indigenous artists foresee the future? Were there pre-Columbian contacts between Europe and the Americas? Or have we simply miscalculated the age of these particular carvings? The rock face continues to hold its silence. The Blackfoot peoples who live near the site have their own interpretations, their own understanding of what the carvings mean. For outsiders, writing on stone remains a place where time seems uncertain, where past and future blur together on ancient stone. Number 4. The Inukshuk networks of the Arctic. An Inukshuk is a stack of stones, a cairn built in the shape of a human figure with outstretched arms. Today, they're recognized as iconic symbols of Canada, marking trails and territorial boundaries across the Arctic and subarctic regions. But the oldest Inukshuk formations are far more mysterious than their well-known descendants. In remote regions of Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, researchers have found stone structures that seem to serve no navigational purpose, arranged in lines that stretch across the tundra for kilometers, or in clusters that appear to mark no particular landmark or settlement. Some are oriented toward specific astronomical events. Some seem to mark territories in ways that don't align with any known tribal boundaries. Some stand alone on barren ridges, visible for miles but pointing toward nothing. The Inuit peoples who have inhabited these regions have their own knowledge of these older structures, but much of that knowledge, stored in oral tradition and embodied practice, was disrupted by colonization. Today, the permafrost is melting, revealing new structures underneath, and many ancient Inukshuk are slowly being erased by climate change. Their purpose, their builders, their stories. These may disappear before we ever fully understand them. Number 3. The symmetrical stone arrangements of Baffin Island. On Baffin Island, in the Canadian Arctic, researchers have identified perfectly symmetrical stone arrangements that have no obvious practical purpose. Long lines of stones forming geometric patterns, circles within circles, radiating spokes of rock stretching outward from central points like wheels. Some of these arrangements are so large that they can only be fully appreciated from above. Others are small and precise, suggesting they were intended to be viewed from ground level, perhaps as part of ceremonies or rituals we can no longer reconstruct. The age of these structures is uncertain, radiocarbon dating is difficult, and oral history is fragmented by cultural disruption. Some researchers propose they're 3,000 years old. Others suggest they might be far older. What's clear is that they required considerable planning, labor, and intention to construct. What's unclear is everything else: who built them, why they built them, what they meant, whether they served spiritual, practical, or astronomical purposes, or some combination of all three. They remain, patient and precise, while the Arctic wind scours them clean, and the ice slowly reclaims the land around them. Number 2, the Cahokia-like mounds of southern Ontario. In southern Ontario, in the shadow of the Great Lakes and the modern sprawl of Toronto, lie the remnants of an earthwork culture that built elaborate mound complexes similar to those of the Mississippian civilization centered at Cahokia, Illinois. These mounds, some shaped as platforms, others as simple conical rises in the landscape, suggest a level of social organization, engineering knowledge, and sustained labor that implies a complex society with centralized leadership. Yet the details of this society, its extent, its duration, its political structure, its relationship to other Great Lakes peoples, remain poorly understood. European settlement destroyed or obscured many mounds. Archaeological study began only after much of the evidence had been lost. The indigenous peoples of the region have traditional knowledge about these mounds and their meanings, but much of that knowledge was lost or suppressed during colonization. Today, a handful of mounds remain, preserved in parks or on private land, but many are barely visible, subtle rises in the landscape that most people walk past without noticing. They represent a civilization that rose, constructed its monuments, and faded into time, leaving only earthen bumps and mystery. Number 1, the alignment of Peterborough petroglyphs, Ontario. In Peterborough, Ontario lies one of the largest concentrations of petroglyphs in North America. Over 900 carved images pressed into a marble-like rock surface in what is now a protected archaeological site. But the true mystery of Peterborough isn't the individual petroglyphs themselves, though they are remarkable. Detailed human figures, animals, geometric designs, spiritual symbols rendered in stone over centuries or perhaps millennia. The true mystery is that these petroglyphs, when mapped and analyzed, appear to be arranged with deliberate astronomical precision. Certain glyphs align with solstices and equinoxes. Others correspond to the rising and setting positions of important stars and constellations as they appeared from this location at specific times in the past. When researchers carefully traced sightlines between petroglyphs and adjacent landscape features, they discovered that the entire site may be functioning as an enormous, three-dimensional astronomical calendar and observation chamber. The Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples who have traditional ties to the region speak of the site as a place of spiritual power and teaching. Archaeological evidence suggests the petroglyphs span at least 1,000 years, perhaps much longer. Yet the coordination required to create such precise astronomical alignments across so large an area, using pre-telescope technology and without written plans, seems to exceed what archaeologists believe should be possible for pre-contact indigenous societies. How did the people who created this site achieve such precision? Did they observe the sky for generations, taking measurements and passing knowledge down through oral tradition? Were they guided by individuals with extraordinary mathematical and astronomical knowledge? Did they possess instruments or techniques for surveying that we have no record of? The site remains open to visitors, but the stone gives up none of its secrets. The petroglyphs sit in silence, their symbols clear, but their meaning encoded in a system we have only begun to glimpse. If you stand in the center of the site on the day of the summer solstice, the sun illuminates specific glyphs in a particular sequence, and you feel for just a moment that you're standing inside the mind of an ancient astronomer. But the moment passes, and the stone returns to its inscrutable quiet, keeping the knowledge of how and why and who to itself, patient and eternal. I hope you have enjoyed this journey through Canada's ancient mysteries. Make sure to share this video with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one.